Hello and welcome to our next lesson on this topic of mass transport. So in previous lessons we've looked at the structure of the leaf, we've spoken about the different tissues that make up the leaf as an organ and allows it to carry out photosynthesis. Last lesson we looked at how substances are transported around a plant and we spoke about two main processes, well three really. We spoke about transpiration, which is the evaporation of water from a leaf. We spoke about transpiration streams, where it's the movement of water through the xylem, and we spoke about translocation, which is the movement of organic substances and sugars through the phloem of a plant. Today's lesson, I would like you to write the title in your books, please, as you would do for any other lesson, Factors that Affect Transpiration. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to define the word transpiration, you should be able to explain how transpiration happens at the leaf, and you should be able to evaluate environmental conditions that to predict the rate of transpiration. Okay, so we said last lesson, but we will pick up on it again today, that the roots of a plant absorb water from the soil. So roots of a plant absorb water from the soil. Once water is absorbed from the soil in the roots, the water is then transported around the plant in the xylem. So we can then say that water is then transported around the plant in the xylem. And we said last lesson that this is known as a transpiration stream. Just to refresh our memory, a transpiration stream is, we'll just neaten up that stream. Transpiration stream can be defined as the movement of water, up through the xylem. Okay, now it's important that we say that the water moves upwards through the xylem, because if you think about it, the water's collected in the roots, the root is the lowest part of the plant, therefore the water can only be moved up. Now to help us with this, I've got an image that looks like this, that is found on the lesson slides, but we can add it in here. So we've got water being taken in by the roots, a transpiration stream moves the water up through the xylem, and once we get to the leaf, the water is lost through the stomata. When the water is lost through the stomata, this process is known as transpiration. Okay? So we can say that water is lost through the stomata of the leaf. Okay, so water evaporates from the stomata of a leaf. Okay, it's important to point out here that a general rule of thumb, this isn't the case for every single plant ever, but a good rule of thumb to remember for exam questions and application questions for these higher marks is that it only happens from the stomata. Plants only lose water from their stomata. Water cannot enter the stomata, and the plant can't lose water from anywhere else. Now, this is known as transpiration. Okay? Transpiration. 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 Now, transpiration is defined as the evaporation of water from the stomata of a leaf. Okay, so transpiration is the evaporation of water from the stomata of a leaf. It's important to point out here that water only exits the stomata. So water only exits the stomata of a leaf. The reason I say this is because I mark countless exam questions where people are telling me, the water enters the leaf through the stomata. As a rule of thumb, it's better to imagine it as the water exiting the stomata only. Okay? And we can also say that this is the only way plants lose water. Again, that's not necessarily true, but it helps you ready for your exams. So we can say this is the only way plants lose water. Now, it's worth pointing out here that if a plant wants to conserve water, if it wants to keep water in, it will close its stomatas. Guard cells will close the stomata and the plant won't lose any water. If the plant wants to lose water, it will open its guard cells, opening the stomata, and water can leave the leaf freely through transpiration. So we can add in red that stomata can open if a plant wants to lose water, and I've put it in red because it's important, or close if it wants to save water. Wants to save water. Okay, so we've said so far that the roots of a plant absorb water from the soil. Water is then transported around the plant in the xylem. This is known as a transpiration stream. So a transpiration stream is the movement of water up through the xylem. Because we're going from the roots, the water never moves down. Okay, always moves upwards through the plant because the roots are the lowest part. Water is lost through the stomata of a leaf. This is a process known as transpiration. Transpiration is the evaporation of water from the stomata of a leaf. Water only exits the stomata of the leaf. It doesn't enter the leaf, okay? This is the only way that plants lose water, and the stomata can open if a plant wants to lose water, or close if the plant wants to save water. Okay, so let's refresh our board. Let's have a think about the process of transpiration. So can you put the subheading, please? Process of transpiration. And underline it, please. So process of transpiration, and we're going to take an image from the PowerPoint. Hopefully it will paste. No, it won't. Let's see if I've still got it open. No, I haven't. We're going to have to refresh that, aren't we? I'm going to have to open it, and then my PowerPoint will go all crazy because I don't currently have a subscription. So apologies. Let's set all this back to black. Let's put the title again, or subheading, process of transpiration. And underline it. I do apologise about my handwriting today. I'm going to do that again. If you need to know in detail, I worked my biceps yesterday because you know how hench I am. And it's having a bit of a problem on my handwriting today. So process of transpiration, okay? When transpiration happens, water first evaporates from the spongy cells into the air spaces. So these spongy mesophyll cells are losing water into the air spaces. So we can say, number one, water evaporates. Water evaporates from spongy mesophyll cells. Spongy mesophyll cells into the air spaces. So the first step in transpiration is that the water evaporates from these spongy mesophyll cells into the air spaces. Okay? The second step is that the air spaces become full of water vapour. Okay? So air spaces become full of water vapour, making the air here more dilute. More dilute. As this is more dilute compared to the air outside of the stomata, there is a sort of water potential gradient made. So water moves by osmosis out of the stomata. Okay? So number three, water moves out of the stomata via osmosis. So it goes from an area that's dilute to more concentrated out of the stomata. And finally, number 4, that's not where the orange is it? Number 4, the water that's lost from the spongy mesophyll is replaced by water in the xylem. So number 4, water lost from the spongy mesophyll is replaced by water from the xylem. So what we've got is water evaporating from these spongy mesophyll layers inside of the leaf into the air gaps. Okay, this makes the water levels inside the air gaps increase, making the air more dilute. This creates a water potential gradient where it goes from a dilute solution to a more concentrated solution in the atmosphere. So water leaves the leaf through the stomata via osmosis. The water lost from the spongy mesophyll cells is then replaced by water from the xylem vessel. If you're not 100% certain about this process, I strongly recommend you have a look back at your lesson notes on osmosis, where we spoke about the movement of water from a more dilute solution to a more concentrated solution. Okay, this is moving from more dilute air to concentrated air. Okay, so the final part of this lesson, we need to have a think about the different factors that affect the rate of transpiration. So can we put the subheading, please? Factors affecting transpiration. So factors affecting transpiration. And can we underline it, please? And I'm going to do my absolute best to underline it, not strike a line through the words. Oh, look at that, that's perfect, that is. Not only have I got big biceps, but I can also underline things. So factors affecting transpiration. We need to talk about 6 different factors and understand why they have an effect. So more transpiration takes place in the day. So more transpiration happens or takes place during the day. Okay, so more transpiration takes place during the day. Now this is because there's more photosynthesis, because there's sunlight, therefore more stomata are open. So this is because there's more photosynthesis and therefore more stomata are open. So if the stomata are open to let in carbon dioxide so that photosynthesis can take place, more water can also leave the leaf. Okay? Less transpiration happens in dry conditions. Okay, so there is less transpiration in dry conditions. Now, the reason there is less transpiration in dry conditions is because the stomata are closed, preventing water loss. Okay, so stomata are closed, preventing water loss. Next one. More transpiration happens in windy conditions. So more transpiration happens in windy conditions. In windy conditions. Now, the reason this happens is because water molecules are blown away from the outside of the leaf. So there's a bigger concentration difference. I know I don't like talking about concentration difference when we talk about water, but the more water that's blown away from the outside of the leaf, the bigger the difference in water molecules inside the leaf and outside the leaf. So we can say here, water molecules are blown away from the leaf surface so more water molecules leave the leaf by osmosis. Leave the leaf by osmosis. Okay. Humid conditions decrease the rate of transpiration. So humid conditions decrease transpiration. Okay, so humid conditions decrease transpiration. This is because the air already contains a lot of water, therefore osmosis doesn't happen as quickly. So we can say that the air contains a lot of water, so osmosis is slower. Warm conditions increase the rate of transpiration. So warm conditions increase transpiration. So warm conditions increase transpiration. This is because warm air can hold more water vapour. So warm air holds more water vapour. It's the worst E ever. More water vapour, that's not much better. I do apologise. So warm air holds more water vapour, so transpiration takes place much more quickly. And finally, light increases transpiration because it causes stomata to open. So more light increases transpiration. The reason for this is because more light means more photosynthesis and therefore stomata are open. So we can put more light means more photosynthesis so stomata are open. Okay, so the factors that affect transpiration: more transpiration takes place during the day because there's more photosynthesis and therefore more stomata are open. Less transpiration happens in dry conditions because stomata are closed to prevent water loss. If you think about it, I told you earlier that water can only be lost from the stomata. Therefore, if there isn't much water in the environment, plants will close the stomata so they don't lose excess water. More transpiration happens in windy conditions because the water is blown away from the surface of the leaf and therefore there is a greater concentration gradient, or there is a bigger difference in the amount of water inside the leaf and outside the leaf, so osmosis is quicker. Humid conditions decrease transpiration. Air contains a lot of water, so osmosis is slower. Warm air holds more water vapour, so warm conditions increase transpiration rate. And more light increases transpiration because if there's more light, there's more photosynthesis, so stomata are open. One thing I want to just point out, and I'm not sure if I've got enough space, but I'll try. Temperature and light intensity are two different things. You can have a hot day with very little light. Granted, usually they're the same. It's usually very hot when it's very, very bright, but not necessarily. So temperature and light intensity are two different things. So I'm just going to put temp or temperature and light intensity are two different things. Okay, don't assume because it's hot there would be high light intensity. There's a good chance there would, but not always. So, you should now be able to tell me what the word transpiration means. You should be able to explain how transpiration happens at the leaf, and you should be able to tell me how environmental conditions affect the rate of transpiration. I hope you found this lesson useful. If you have any questions, please send me an email or comment below in Google Classrooms. Please stay safe and I will see you in the next lesson. Thank you.